Hello, welcome to Fiber Trek. Take a look here. I don't know, can you see her? Should we bring her into the... Here. Bella? She's like, just let me go eat manure, Mom. That's what she wants to do. Right, I was welcoming you to Fiber Trek. This is Fleece Wise installment 2. If you are not familiar with this series, it is a 4-part series I am working on with Claire of New Hampshire Knits, Emily of Fibertown, and Sarah of Yarns at Yinhu. The primary goal of this is to explore our craft a little bit deeper and look at our connection to sheep. So on this particular piece of the story, I am going to be looking at moving fleece from the animal to the fleece tent and what that involves. And I joined Michelle of Bybrook Farm at the Common Ground Country Fair. And I'm also going to offer up a little personal reflection about my thoughts on my connection to sheep and the deepening exploration of my craft. If you haven't already heard the first installment, I recommend you head over to New Hampshire Knits, Claire's interviews with Teresa of Great Bay Woolworks and Jen of Contented Butterfly Farm. That's really going to set you up and give you the bedrock to this conversation, which really is about turning grass into fleece and what is involved in doing that. There's deeper conversations about that with Emily of Fibertown and her concepts of terroir, and you'll probably hear threads of that coming out in my own personal reflection after we kind of take ourselves over with Michelle. So with no further ado, because I'm sitting here scratching my dog to keep her from eating manure, I am going to send you off to Michelle of Bybrook Farm, and I'll see you on the flip side. So I'm at the Common Ground Fleece Tent, and I'm here with Michelle at Bybrook Farm, who you have seen before. She is the guru of fleece here in the state. She's one of my favorite fleece women.
So generous.
But before you come into the fleece tent, fleeces have to get here. And I wanted to talk to Michelle a little bit about fleece preparation, what to expect, how fleeces come in. Emily of Fibertown is going to talk to you about getting into the fleece tent, picking a fleece, and we're also going to talk a little bit about judging today. So Michelle, can we get this fleece out and talk a little bit about how it needs to come into the fleece tent?
Once the fleeces are sheared and you skirt it carefully, they need to be rolled in such a way that when they come into the tent, somebody wants to look at it, they can actually see what the fleece looks like.
So skirting, we've talked about skirting before when we were on your farm because we did a basic skirt, but skirting is...
It's going around the edges. When the shearer shears, a good shearer will remove belly wool, leg wool, and curl it off to the side. And then the same thing with top knot, the top of their head, and around the back of their head. But there will still be wool from the underarm, down along the edges of the belly, through the groin area, and around their bottom that needs to come off, maybe dirty, wet, short, not desirable to have in your spinning sleeve. So that all comes off. So you're left with the good stuff.
Like it should kind of look like a sheep.
It should still look like a sheep, as in should be able to identify where the neck is, the front shoulders, down the sides, and the rump.
were saying that it needs to come off. The shearer's paying attention to some pieces, and then you're paying attention to some pieces. As it comes off, you lay it out, and then you're skirting it, getting rid of the dags and obvious bits.
Right.
And then it needs to be prepared. What about sheep preparation before shearing? Like you had mentioned in a brief conversation about being wet, damp, and we can talk about that a little bit later, right? You're going to go into that. Perfect. So, so for this case, we've skirted this, right?
We've skirted this. Still, you can still tell what end is up. This is the back end. Goes down to the front end. And it's all lovely and ready to go. So when you want to bring it into the fair, get it ready, after it's all picked through, you take your sides, you just fold them in towards the middle, towards the backbone. And then that way you can still see if there's any little second cuts maybe that are still hanging on. And you fold in your other side. Wonderful. Okay.
Right. So cut side up is the side that, yeah, that's against the skin. Okay.
And you roll butt to neck.
Okay, butt to neck.
So that way, the prettiest shoulders always look really nice.
Right. So yeah, you're thinking about getting this into the bag so that people can see it and be attracted by it.
So all looks good. That's a nice side. And when you, nope, that can stand fine.
Not easy, huh?
Bigger arm.
I know that's the problem.
And now it is ready for entrance into the fair or the festival that you're attending. So that's a couple things that are going to happen before it's coming into the fleece tent. Emily's going to talk a little bit about what to do when you get there, like I said, and we'll get some more information for you on getting sheep ready to be sheared. So we'll be back. So I wanted to start kind of at the beginning with Michelle and having your sheep getting ready for shearing and what that really involves and what has to happen before that shearer shows up to your farm. So can you just, the shearer's coming, what has to happen to get these guys ready?
I think first you should almost interview your shearer. If you don't have one, you need to know that he or she is going to do what you need done. If you want a hand shearing fleece or hand spinning fleece, they should spin to that for you. Being a little more careful and not taking so many second cuts. So before they come, you should have everybody in the barn. Even if it's not going to rain, it could be cool and damp, and they're going to be wet or damp on the outside. So if everybody's in the barn, light breakfast, just hay, little hay, keep them happy. And then about an hour before the shearer comes, start closing them up into a smaller space. It generates some body heat, warms up that lanolin if you're shearing March, April, or earlier, and it makes it a lot easier for the shearer to shear that way.
Right, and then once the shearer's there, it's just setting up and bringing sheep to him, getting fleeces up off the floor.
Yeah, if you're going to skirt there, you should have some sort of setup to do a brief skirting anyway.
Don't apologize, it's all right. We're good. It's a fair.
To be set up to skirt, a light skirting anyways, get some of the rougher stuff off. Have sheets ready. Put them in a sheet right away, so even if they are a little damp or a little sweaty, has a chance to breathe.
Woo! Getting goosed. It's the best part of my day.
And it's better than, it's so much better than putting them in a plastic bag. They should never go from the animal into a plastic bag.
Right. And the other thing that you mentioned that was interesting to me was the concept of warming that lanolin up so that those shears are what, not caking up on the animal or the...
Yeah,
It's all right.
yeah, it allows the shears to glide through the animal more quickly, and it doesn't get hard on the shears. And we'll have to stop and dig off some of it at some point anyways. But it's like putting a warm knife through
Better. Yeah. Okay.
to do it that way.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit about shearing and how we're going to get into that tent and then go up at the fleece tent. This may not be in order just because that's the way the day's going, but yeah, so you're going to see a little bit of fleece judging a little bit later, so tune in.
Okay. So I could talk a little bit to start out with if you'd like that.
great.
So we're going to start the wool judging right now. We're doing buddy before that. So ordinarily what we do when we judge fleeces is we start with white colored fleeces. And the reason we do that is we don't want to contaminate any white with any colored fleeces. So we start with the white, and we usually start with the finest first. There's different categories of wool because wool is used for different purposes. So this is going to be the finest, and when we say the finest, it's the more crimp per inch. So you'll see it as you see the other fleeces. You'll see along the staple length that it's wider. Okay, so the finer the crimp, usually the softer the wool. Okay. So that being said, you can see this is the one-time shearing, and it will be judged with a certain criteria. And it's kind of complex in that there's a lot of criteria there, so you can't go down every single aspect of it. But what we're generally looking for is a fiber that is resilient. There's nothing wrong with it, so that you can make yarn. We look for cleanliness because we don't like to see a lot of vegetation in fleeces. That again affects the yarn or how it's manufactured. And length, because that is another criteria in which your yarn is affected. So all that's basically what we're looking at when we're looking at pretty much a year's growth of fleece. So I'm just going to start going through she's going to help me, she's my recorder. And I'm just going to go through the criteria a little bit. If anybody has a question, you can ask it, as we go along, or maybe I'll just answer it as we actually start judging it.
What kind of sheep is this?
Okay, now that's another good question. What we're judging right now today is hand spinning fleeces. There are different ways of judging fleeces, and that can be by breed specific. This is not breed specific here, okay? I can guess at the breed, but I'm not required to know the breed, okay? That would be just a different, it would be categorized differently, it would be judged differently. So what I'm doing is it's categorized by the coarseness of the fiber, and this is fine, and I believe we have another entry that's fine. And ordinarily, fine fleeces are Rambouillets, Merinos, okay? I'm just going to use those two right now because it just doesn't come, all of them come to me. But the fact of the matter is, it's also it's dictated by the landscape of the environment too. I mean, you can only grow certain kinds of sheep in certain areas as well. But those are largely, a lot of merinos. We have a lot of merinos here. So if I were to guess, I would say it was a merino, could be crossbred with something else. So, okay, it is a merino. Okay, so she just told me it is a merino. All right, so that was a good guess.
Yeah, she's the expert.
All right, so I'm going to start judging it. Sure. Sure. All right, do you want me to run through this one time, sort of with all of you? Are you- Okay, well, there's different categories. So the first category we're going to look at is going to be under management. And under management, the criteria is cleanliness, skirting, lack of second cuts, and presentation of the fleece. Originally, you didn't see it wrapped up, okay? The presentation is very important because when the assistants unroll it, you want to be able to unroll it so that it is in its most natural state, okay? Where it came off the sheet. And how it should be rolled is when your shearer comes, they shear it, and you are supposed to fold it pretty much in the middle on each side. And you roll it from the back to the front, okay? So when you present it, you're going to see the best possible view of the fleece. That's what you want to show. So when you're looking at this, you can see that it has some dirt. That's natural, okay? That's the outside. So when you look at the inside, you can see that it's all very white, and whiter. And that's because, obviously, it's like your own hair. You know, it's growing. And so this was the very beginning. This particular fleece, I would say, was probably covered at some point in time because there's not a lot of vegetation. That's another thing we do. We put covers on fleeces, on the sheep to keep them, because sheep have a tendency to eat over themselves, and then you get all this vegetation, and it's very difficult for you to process it or for the spinner to process it. So it's sort of twofold, you know. It makes for better fleece or somebody wanting to buy it when it's as clean as it can be without vegetation. So, all right. So the presentation when it was unrolled was correct. Am I right? Yeah. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is lack of second cuts. And second cuts aren't going to mean anything to anybody that doesn't raise sheep. It's when your shearer comes and he takes the shears on your animal, and if he doesn't get it all about the same length, he'll want to go over it again. You want him not to do that because obviously the second time around there are little pieces of fiber that are going to be in your fleece. Best to just go over it once. And if he does do it too, get it out of it. We also have a skirting table, and it has like holes in it where you can shake your fleeces and get them out. Again, now remember, these are for show, so we're going to be very particular because people are competing against each other, and you are supposed to be bringing your best of your best out here, okay? So second cuts, we'll be looking for that. And the only way I can look for it, and of course I can't go through every single piece, but I'm going to shake it. More often it's done electric. There are not very many hand shears anymore. In fact, I think there might be one that I know of. Yeah.
I did.
Okay. So we can see that it's quite clean. There is no real second cut. If I wish I could show you an example of that, but not in this one. Okay? Well, maybe a little bit, but that's not even noticeable. Really. Okay. Okay, the next part is the skirting of the fleece. Jesus gets so complicated, doesn't it, when you start to try to say everything. Anyway, ordinarily, what you're actually looking for originally is there should be no wool from the head of the sheep or the belly of the sheep. Okay? It's not consistent and it's not valued. So you never want to see that. Of course, this person, I can already tell, this person who owns this knows that already. It's not there. Okay? That's number one. You can further skirt your fleeces to keep your fiber length consistent. And that's where it comes, that's a gray area. How much can you really take off and really represent a real full clip on the animal? You know, I've seen people make them really small to make them perfect, but it's not realistic. So I have a lot of gray area there when I judge it because I want to be able to see a real full clip. This is a very good example of that. This is a real full clip of an animal. Okay, so what I don't want to see though, here's a little piece here, but it's one little piece. Yeah, you don't want to see any done. Thank you. That you definitely don't want to see. All right, now we're going to talk about the cleanliness. When you look at this fleece and you see like this, that's not the cleanliness we're talking about. What I'm looking for is vegetation and things like this. Okay? So, I don't know exactly what this is. It's not grass. Although there's a little bit here. Sometimes animals, get under trees or whatever, and some of the bark or the fiber from the tree or whatever, I had it on my sheep like that, and it comes out. If I was showing this fleece, I would have taken a little more time and pulled these things out as much as I could. So now we're going to look at the health of the wool. And I think I said that at the beginning, that you want a strong, you want the fiber to be healthy. Animals can get a break in their fiber if they're either ill and sometimes under the stress of lambing. That can happen. So I'm going to pick certain places here, and all I do is I pull it, and I should hear a nice little ping. I shouldn't feel anything crackly, I shouldn't hear anything crackly, and it shouldn't sound good. So you can even try it. You can pull it, and you can hear what I'm talking about. It's very healthy wool.
Right, well, I hope that you enjoyed that time with Michelle at Common Ground Fair, and I hope, as I said before, you have more questions than were answered. So thank you so much, Michelle and Janny. I think I told you Janny was directing, for taking some time to do that with me. And and I look forward to Emily's continuation of this Sheep to Shawl story when she visits the Shenandoah Sheep Festival. I think it's Shenandoah Valley Sheep Festival. And talks to us a little bit about picking out a fleece. So on the next installment, that's where Emily will be taking us. I did tell you I would give you a little insight into my background and some of my own personal reflection. I don't typically talk about this because I find it can be a little political. But I'll start with my history, which may give you a better understanding of my personal sheep politics. So I started out not really in knitting. I wanting to knit sweaters or driven by products or even the actual skill. I had befriended a family on an island in Orkney in the Northern Isles, and very, very, very close with them, just like family to me. And spent quite a bit of time there on their sheep and beef operation, and literally just fell in love with the landscape and the lifestyle. I described this a little bit on my blog in an essay that I wrote, so I won't reiterate that here, but I was exceptionally shaped by that time and my return trips to the island. The pictures that you see on the podcast, the kind of thumbnail, is on Ferry, which is right off the coast of their island. They keep sheep on this island. It's an uninhabited, they call it kind of like a calf. It's just a little island off of another island. That's the old schoolhouse, I believe, the old doors of the schoolhouse. But anyway, I digress. So this island is so important to me that when we got married, my husband and I, we flew over there. I flew my wedding dress over, and he brought his suit, and we had the marriage blessed on the island, in the fields, on the farm. So I have a pretty strong connection to that space, and I've spent a lot of time outside there, wet and cold, sunburnt and hot, covered in gnats, and I just, I guess for lack of better poetic words, I just have very strong connection with that space. So I wanted to find a way, because I wasn't living there full time, and I'm still not, to connect with that landscape. And I wanted to be able to kind of find something that was evocative enough to bring back that kind of very visceral experience. And I chose knitting because I wanted to work with wool. And that's kind of where I entered into this conversation. And through that experience of farming and then to the craft is really where I began to then move into the skills of knitting, of spinning, of prepping fleece, of picking out fleece. And that has led me into breed-specific, and keeping a small flock, etc. So, place being the driving factor has then really shaped a number of other things. I have Icelandic sheep because I find Iceland to be beautiful. I visited, and I love these kind of wild, remote landscapes, and I love that these animals survive there, and I love that they turn grass and brush into such an amazing resource. And I think when I use the word politics, that's kind of where I start to, we kind of start to see that personal politic piece come into play. I definitely use food and fiber to act on this world in I hope a positive way. There are stories that I want to perpetuate that I find add huge value and are important in this world, and this is a way that I can exercise that and feel like I'm creating action. I want to help people keep their farms going that have legacies, family farms that want to start something and utilize a land base in a creative way, conservative way, who want to promote a lifestyle such as the one in Orkney, and I want to be a part of that. So I spend a lot of money on food, and I spend a lot of money on fiber, And that's a very powerful thing for me to do, is make choices with my funds. And so that stage, that forum happens to be where I want to participate and affect change in this world. So those very place-based, soulful stash kind of fibers and yarns, those are stories I want to perpetuate. You know, it's not a mystery here, although I've never said it, that I don't use superwash, I don't use man-made fibers and acrylic, nylon, etc. You just don't see them here. They're stories that exist. They are a player in the game, but I get to make a conscientious choice, and I like that. And those are not stories that I want to perpetuate. So people enter into that conversation on many different levels, and some people really, the skill is important. They don't want to lose that skill. There's a language that they want to keep, perpetuate, and tell the story. And so the medium is not important in that action. And so, so I think we all kind of, you know, find our way within that and how we want to participate. And this happens to be, for me, a really important piece. And one of the ways that I like, you know, that I like to participate. Am I rambling? I think I'm on the rambling now. So I've never really actually said that out loud on this podcast, and for no other reason than I didn't want to alienate people from this conversation. It's an inclusionary community. I understand that, but I also know that I have some very strong opinions and strong values around my medium, and I can probably be a little soapboxy about it. I don't want to be, but I probably can be. And so I've tried to temper that and not putting it in this podcast, because I want people to come here and ask questions and reflect on their own experience and discover new things and be my friend. And so I hesitated in sharing that, but I feel like in this particular conversation, it makes sense to kind of get a better understanding of your source in this discussion. So anyway, I hope that that particular commentary did not feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't find it. Anyway, I hope that it felt like inclusionary instead of exclusionary. I just wanted to provide a little bit more insight into, you know, where I find that deep connection here, and share it with all of you. So, right, I know, like I said, that Emily's picking up where we left off. I mean, it's kind of like deep thoughts with Fiber Trek, and now I'm just like, see you later. And I don't really know how to wrap that up. And yeah, so I'm not going to talk any specific experiences about fleece selection, because I think you're going to get a little bit of that when we purchase our fleece at Rhinebeck, and then we each kind of how we each kind of approach that process. So I think you'll get a little bit more about me there. But just, well, like a quick rundown is, you all know this, it's like long wool, gray, combed, worsted spun, like, there you are. And I am branching out. You know that I'm branching out from that. So that's just like a little checklist about, you know, Fiber Trek and spinning, to, you know, kind of give you the stats. But I think that the experience at Rhinebeck will provide a little bit more insight. Anyway, I think I'm on the rambling. Bella has fallen asleep, so she must think I am done. And I'm going to sign off, and I hope wherever your fiber treks may take you, that you return home safely and with lots of fiber. Till next time, bye.